Today we're going to pick up Dr. John Eastman, and I am so honored to have made the acquaintance with Dr. John Eastman. He is an attorney for President Trump. He's not just an attorney, he's a constitutional scholar. He's a senior fellow of the Claremont Institute. We have a highly credentialed, principled man who has been attacked relentlessly because of his counsel that he gave to Vice President Mike Pence on what the options were that he could do on January 6th, with the thought in mind that the President Trump, actually believed that the election had been tampered with.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country.
Attorney John Eastman, video from Fox News shows FBI agents seizing his cell phone.
Many of us still believe the election of 2020 was stolen.
We are on this road trip, and what are some of the things we're going to be doing with Dr. Eastman?
Well, we're going to be attending a leadership conference and a VIP dinner, and we're going to have the presentation of Dr. Eastman's documentary called The Eastman Dilemma, Lawfare or Justice. And then we're going to have a question and answer session with Dr. Eastman. First stop is North Oakland County with the GOP District 9 Oakland County representatives. There was no doubt that the Oakland County 9th District GOP worked hard to make this event a spectacular opportunity to advance the principles of our American Republic, our magnificent republic. Dr. John Eastman brilliantly justified the need to stand strong for justice and to put an end to lawfare. But how do we do that? Well, that was basically the focus of the question and answer session that highlighted the will of the people, the concerns of our nation, and offered Dr. Eastman an opportunity to show the world the strength of staying true to the republic that we have been given, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Watch, listen, and learn as this audience in Metamora, Michigan was engaged and engaging, asking constitutional scholar Dr. John Eastman the most excellent questions.
Well, first of all, we set out with that movie to accomplish three things: lay out the evidence, lay out the legal strategy, and then talk about the lawfare so people get angry and do something about it. I thank you for the indulgence of your time to watch it. I think it's a very important movie, and I hope everybody in the country gets a chance to see it. Okay, questions?
While I was watching the movie, I kept thinking, how do we get this? I have a lot of friends that couldn't come tonight. How do we get this across for other people to see?
The filmmakers, as a group out of Hollywood called Madison, like in James Madison, Madison Media Fund. And if you go to their website, madisonmediafund.org, it's still available for free streaming, because Amazon Prime, that was supposed to put it up on the paid site, keeps coming up with excuses not to do that.
I've asked people and they have no response. My daughter went to vote in the not the last election, the other election, told her word she would be late, went in, voted her ballot, filled out her ballot. When she went to put it through, they told her she had already voted. She was the first one in her precinct in Lawfare, and they told her she had already voted. So they told her, we'll check into it. So she went on to work. They later called and said they fixed the problem. They would put her ballot through. How do we know it even got through? But what could she have done about it?
Yeah. So we saw that happen all over the country. In fact, under oath in the Georgia legislature, Georgia senior in college, and she and her 18-year-old sister went in to vote, and they were making a big deal out of it to get the I voted sticker, because it was her younger sister's first time to vote. They made a big deal out of it, and she was told that she'd already voted by absentee, and she goes, no, I didn't. And very patronizingly, they patted her on the head and said, oh, dearie, you must have just forgotten. And she said, no, we've been looking forward to this for a very long time, because this is my sister's first vote. And they let her cast a provisional ballot, which of course got thrown away. And the absentee ballot, they subsequently learned, had been requested by somebody else, and on the ballot application, they had requested it to be delivered to some address she didn't recognize, and then it was voted. And of course, you don't do that for a single vote, right? Somebody didn't just have it in for this particular young lady as a senior at Georgia State or Georgia Tech or wherever she was. This was part of a concerted effort, and you can see the back end of that effort in Dinesh D'Souza's documentary, 2,000 Mules. They harvested all these ballots by applying and having them sent to false addresses, the NGOs, and then they needed people to pick them up and fill them out and deliver them, and that was the 2,000 Mules movie. So what your daughter suffered through was, in my view, part of a nationwide conspiracy to steal people's votes. Yeah, and how do you prove it? Well, what you do is you get the ballot application, which they were legally required to keep for 22 months, and compare the signature. And when you've got the signature not matching, you will at least now know there was fraud. You won't be able to figure out, unless it was sent to a different address. Now you've got the address where the fraud was sent to, and you can start piecing those things together. And this guy right here, Patrick Kobeck, will take the case and be able to run it. Sorry, Patrick, I just gave you a lot of new work.
Dr. Eastman, should she go to law enforcement with that?
Yeah, I would, and get the report. They won't do anything about it.
But it's on record.
Yeah, get it on the record.
There's a few cases that are truly outstanding in America. John Adams in defending men against crime of murder. John Quincy Adams, I think, is on the stop. Sir, where would you like the results of this case to go, and how would you like to resolve it?
Yeah, so ultimately, if we're going to have a viable adversarial system of justice, we've got to put this lawfare genie back in the bottle and nail the lid shut so that it never comes out again. Because what they're trying to do, as we explained in the film, the 65 Project was quite explicit about it. We want to not only disbar all these lawyers, but make them so toxic in their firms and their communities that no lawyers will take on these kind of cases again. And it's not just election cases. You get up at a school board meeting and complain about your school board letting transgenders compete against your daughters in your sports or what have you. I mean, they're trying to silence us into submission. They're trying to destroy a character that is uniquely American, and I don't think they're going to succeed. Where would I like to see it end up? I think the only way you put a stop to this is by holding people criminally that are responsible for this criminally accountable.
Bill Bailey had filed the lawsuit with Matt DiPerno. Were you aware of our forensic audit that Russell Ramsland's group did on December 6th? And was that part of your reasoning for advising President Trump and Vice President Pence, as was shown in the movie? Yes. Were you aware of that lawsuit, and was that part of your reasoning?
Yes, it was. I was very aware of that lawsuit. And when Chris Krebs said that there's no evidence that this was the most secure election in history, there's no evidence that any vote was flipped. And I looked at those thousands of votes that were cast for President Trump that were recorded for Joe Biden in Antrim County, and I say Chris Krebs knew that as well, and therefore he's a liar, because we had. Now, there's some dispute. I think Alex Halderman's subsequent analysis about how that happened makes a lot of sense, but both he and your team identified the significant security flaws, including the deletion of the logs, which I think is the most astounding thing. The 2012, the 2016 logs are there. The 28 logs are there. Where did the 2020 logs go, and why? There's only one explanation for that. What you guys did was tremendous, and I just wish it had gotten more serious play. I've tried to give it that.
Well, just so you know, sir, my wife defeated Cheryl Guy and is now the Antrim County Clerk.
Dr. Eastman, in all sincerity, as a combat veteran, I know that all America is going to be super proud of your awesome service once the truth comes out.
Thank you.
And let me just ask you, are you involved at all in President Trump's coming effort for paper ballots for the next federal election?
So President Trump and I are under court order down in Georgia not to be discussing any of these related issues. It's a condition on my bond release from prison down there. So I'm very careful in never violating that bond requirement, because as long as that case is going to take before it gets resolved, I don't want to spend it in the county jail down in Fulton County. That said, the people that are working on those issues are, many of them, very good friends of mine, and as needed, they call on me for input and advice.
Dr. Eastman, how do we actually go about bringing these people to justice? Is it under abuse of power? Is it federal? I mean, we have a criminal sitting in the Attorney General's office right now, Dana Nessel. How do you prosecute her? Does it have to be a state Attorney General? Does it have to be federal? Can anybody do it?
So in my view, what we've been witnessing and have evidence to support is a nationwide conspiracy to violate federal constitutional rights. That's a violation of 18 United States Code, Section 241, conspiracy to deprive people of rights. The recent referral from the Director of National Intelligence to the Department of Justice, a criminal referral of the Crossfire Hurricane stuff that occurred in 2016, includes information about the raid on Mar-a-Lago. That means that they're allowed to convene the grand jury down in Florida rather than D.C. It means we're within the statute of limitations. And I understand that the weaponization task force is looking at all of the implications of that conspiracy for the broader conspiracy of which it was a part, and that's the 2020 election conspiracy. And that means the people that are, and by the way, one other significant piece of this occurred last February. Tina Peters in Colorado is sitting in prison right now, pending appeal for what should be the ultimate reversal of a ridiculous criminal conviction. And she's a 70-year-old grandmother, Gold Star mother, sleeping on, half-inch cot on stone things at 70 years old. It is an outrage. And she filed a federal habeas corpus petition, and the United States Department of Justice weighed in with a filing in that case last February, saying, yes, absolutely, she ought to get bond, at least pending appeal. And oh, by the way, and this is the reason I'm telling this story here, oh, by the way, we want to alert the court that these prosecutors are under criminal investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice. So the prosecutors, the DA down in Georgia, the Attorney General in Arizona, the NGOs that they were working with, like 65 Project. The Attorney General in Arizona hired States United Democracy Center. This is a rabid anti-Trump, bipartisan they call it, because there's one guy that's a violently anti-Trump Republican on their board. They hired them to do the prosecution memo in Arizona, which is supposed to be a neutral assessment of the law. It's insane. It's like hiring a fox to do the safety memo for your chicken coop. They're the same group that brought the bar complaint against me. So the NGOs, by the way, many of whom are getting our own taxpayer money that DOE's exposed with Elon Musk was in charge and started looking at where all this money laundering was going on. So all of this is part of the same effort to deprive the American people of control over the direction of their government through free and fair elections. It's all part of the same nationwide conspiracy with lots of different players, and I hope before we're done with this, come December of 2028, that a lot of them will be in orange jumpsuits. I want orange to be the new black.
You mentioned a giant conspiracy. How do all these people in 50 states coordinate and get everything to be equivalent everywhere?
So one of the interesting things about conspiracy law is you can have what's called a spoken wheel conspiracy, where they don't have to be coordinating with each other as long as there's some common mission that they're all part of on one sliver. And I guarantee you, if we had prosecutors bent on getting to the bottom of this, that's what they'll learn. And I do think we have prosecutors bent on getting to the bottom of this, like Ed Martin, head of the weaponization task force, and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino over at the FBI. I mean, you could not pick people that are more pit bullish on getting to the bottom of this. They are running into flack. You can imagine the deep state is not without power, and trying to pull all sorts of tricks and not getting them the staff they need and what have you. But these guys aren't going to let go until they get done what's needed to be done.
When I was doing the preliminary examination, we actually had the general counsel of the U.S. Senate that I cross-examined, and other defense attorneys did that as well. Regarding the certificate the 16 electors actually sent in to D.C., the general counsel testified that Mike Pence never received it, nor did he have any knowledge. So I'd like to get your feedback or your thoughts regarding that. I'm not saying that it's part of the conspiracy, perhaps, right now, but have you seen this in other states, and what are your thoughts?
So, look, I don't exactly see eye to eye with Mike Pence on this. And there's sworn testimony by his general counsel, Greg Jacob, taking issue with the fact that the archivist was not forwarding all certificates to them and making judgments about which should be forwarded and which not. The archivist told Greg Jacob that they get in every election some lady down in Tennessee that sends in her own slate. And the archivist said, we just don't pass it on to you. It's like, I'm sorry, archivist, you don't have any constitutional authority here. These need to come by. And the example of this was Richard Nixon. And if you look at the Nixon statement when he got up in January of 1961, he didn't say, I've got the electors for me that were certified by the governor, and I've got the electors for Kennedy that were subsequently certified. He said, I have 3 slates of electors that have been given to me. The original Nixon electors certified by the governor, the Kennedy electors that met on the same day to preserve their options in case the election challenge went their way, not certified by anybody, and then the 3rd slate of electors that was certified after the election went their way, at least that's what they claim. The new Democrat governor quickly certified it and flew it to Washington, D.C. He thought all of those 3 slates, by law, had to be presented to him. And the language of the statute says all certificates and papers purporting to be certificates. When Mike Pence said, I don't even have these because they weren't certified, he was violating that precedent and violating that law. And he should have looked at them, but he thought he was just the world's most expensive letter opener.
Dr. Eastman, if I can ask one follow-up, I'm sorry, I'm breaking the rules a little bit for you.
But he's your next attorney general, so let him break the rules now so he won't do it then.
So, and again, I don't mean to get into the weeds too much, but the Electoral Count Act, that has been changed, amended, whatever you want to say. So in the future, and I'm going through a hypothetical, if we had alternate certificates or dueling certificates coming in, is it truly now, at this particular juncture, in your mind, that the Vice President of the United States is more so an individual with a ministerial duty instead of actual discretion? Or are there perhaps ways, if you have researched or you discussed, where we can still mount challenges that would be valid?
So, given what I've dealt with over the last 4 years, I would not counsel anybody to mount challenges on that. Because you'll end up getting run out of town, even though you're right. And I want to explain that. When we did the premiere of the movie at Mar-a-Lago, we had a panel discussion before the movie with me and Alan Dershowitz and Rudy and a couple of others, Peter Navarro, Jeff Clark. And my daughter was there with my brand new grandson, 2 months old, and sitting in the back row in case he started fussing. And she could make a quick exit. And then out of the corner of her eye, she saw somebody she thought she recognized standing in the back of the room. And this was in the big, grand, gold-leafed ballroom in Mar-a-Lago. And it was President Trump just standing there listening to us. And so she quick got her phone out and got a little selfie with my grandson in front of the background. He then went up for the state dinner he was in Mar-a-Lago for with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and Marco Rubio and Matt Walsh and Scott Bessent. But then they all came down and watched the movie with us. And what a thrill. But before the movie started, he got up on stage and said, and thanked me for the work. And he said, look, they changed the Electoral Count Act to get rid of the provision Eastman was relying on. That means that they knew he was right. My view was the Electoral Count Act is unconstitutional. The Constitution says the Senate and the House are to be there merely present, right, to observe. Why is that so important? I think the movie goes into this a little bit, but it's because of separation of powers. If you give the power to the Congress to make the final determination of who the president's going to be, you've now destroyed separation of powers. You've made the president subservient to Congress. You've made us a parliamentary system rather than a separation of powers system. So we don't have any discussion in the records of the Federal Convention about what they thought of the vice president's role here, but we do have extensive discussion that they did not want Congress to have any role at all. The Electoral Count Act is a usurpation of that power given either to the vice president or to the state legislatures. And the modification they did after 2020 makes it more egregiously a violation of the Constitution, in my view. And I do think it needs to be challenged, but it's got to be in a way where the political forces are such that it's more likely to get a proper hearing in the courts, as it wasn't in 2020. Yeah.
Thank you.
Back here.
Dr. Eastman, nice to meet you. I've been working in a lot of the different courts, and I'm an engineer by trade, and I'm not a lawyer. And so...
Thank you.
There
are more than enough of it. It's one of those rare professions where 99% of them give the rest of us a bad name, right?
And so here in Michigan, one of the things that's happening is that I call the Michigan Bar Association is actually operating as a cartel. And the issue here is that when it comes down to the ballots, the public needs to be more aware through the Republican Party and other groups, is that the Lapeer Bar Association here in Lapeer, or the Genesee County Bar Association, they're picking these judges because they're picking a person who's going to make the most profit for their local bar members. They don't care about your justice at all. It's about how much money the lawyer that you hired is going to make, and when you run out of money is when you run out of justice. And the problem here is that people don't even question the ballots to say, why is there only one candidate? And when that one candidate wins, they stay on the ballot till they age out at age 70. So you have the same criminal on the bench from the time they're 40 years old to the time they're 75. As you say, we have to do a better job getting people to vote properly and learn how to get better candidates. And this is a grassroots effort. You got to understand, here in Eastern Michigan District Court, the judge came from Genesee County court system. It was an elected person. We caused that. And as these people come up through the court system, we need to do a better job. And I think that's what you're trying to get at in a lot of this stuff, is that we've enabled these criminals to take over the court system.
So it used to be people got appointed to the bench toward the end of a very successful career full of competence and integrity. And then we shifted after a while to people that brought in partners in their firm and they couldn't figure out how to get rid of them. And so they figured if we donate lots of money to the governor, we'll get a judicial appointment, problem solved. But a couple of decades ago, even that model got changed. And it was picking people not for their competence and their integrity and their faithful application to the law, but rather their commitment to pursuing a pretty radical agenda that would get to the answer they wanted no matter what the law was. And we are suffering that at every level of our court system right now, it seems to me. The founders had two checks on that process, a front-end check, the Senate confirmation process, and a back-end check, the impeachment process. And we got rid of the impeachment as a check early on, when Jefferson probably overplayed his hand in the impeachment of Sam Chase. But we've now gotten to the point where we don't think we can impeach federal judges no matter how egregiously wrong and abusive their decisions are. Because that's just on-bench thing and they should be immune from that. Our founders would have thought exactly the opposite. You engage in ordinary crime, the criminal law will handle that. It's your breach of the public trust on the bench that should be the ground for impeachment. And we need to revive an impeachment check on the judges, even if it wouldn't go through, to let them know that we're watching and we have that ability to do that may get some of them more in line, but only some of them. And the only way you solve this long term is quit letting them get appointed on the front end. But that you're right. I mean, the bars are largely infected with a leftist ideology that doesn't see the law as something to be faithfully applied, but something to be manipulated to achieve a political end that they couldn't otherwise get. And as long as that remains the mantra for how we get judges, we're in serious trouble with the rule of law in this country. And that's why I fight as hard as I am to try and stop it.
So, 2 quick points. Apparently we are under a textbook of Marxist usurpation of this country. We're a group of elitists who want to seal everybody's everything in control. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is you didn't set up the right NGO for yourself. So I'd like to know where we can get to your legal defense on.
Thank you for that. So, and we're going to do we're doing a 4-city tour that Janice has set up. So we're going to create a competition between the 4 events. And the Legal Defense Fund site is givesendgo.com/Eastman. It's not GoFundMe because they would have confiscated all the funds already. GiveSendGo is a lovely Christian site. GiveSendGo.com/Eastman. And you can send a donation and you can send prayers. And my wife and I read them. They're heartwarming. If you make a donation in any amount but include somewhere in it today's date, 22, so $5.22 or $22 or $220 or whatever you want to do, have 22 in there, and then we'll compare that tomorrow's event with 23 and Wednesday's event with 24, 25, and I'll let Janice know at the end which group did the best. But beyond the donation, seriously, the prayers, and we also use it as a blog to keep people updated. While you're there, visit update number 43 and see the article my children wrote about me when the original Barr decision came down. It came down on Wednesday of Holy Week, and it took effect 3 days later. And for those of you that know the significance of the Triduum during Holy Week, you will really appreciate my son and my daughter's article about this.
Dr. Eastman, besides what you're doing to defend yourself, can you tell us about some of the projects you're involved in, kind of like a sword instead of a shield, some of the things you're working on?
Oh, sure. With the crazy Barr thing, the Barr court didn't have any authority to suspend my license or to disbar me. Only the California Supreme Court can do that. They could just recommend. But a few years ago, the legislature passed a statute that on recommendation, your license is automatically put in inactive status, which is effectively a suspension. And so I'm not allowed to practice in any lower court, but the U.S. Supreme Court said, thanks very much for letting us know that. Let us know if there's a final decision. I'm still practicing in the United States Supreme Court. And a couple of cases, we've got a case that was just filed last month, September 8th, just a couple of weeks ago, asking the court to overrule the gay marriage decision in Obergefell. We've got a major property rights case up there. We've got, I'm one of the leading guys on the scholarship on the limits of the Congress's spending power under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. And so you can imagine how much fun I'm having with all the Doge budget cuts on that. And then I had a pretty significant hand in the president's birthright citizenship executive order, so we're working on that one as well. By the way, God works in mysterious ways sometimes. I do not think we would be seeing today nearly the effectiveness of the administration in pushing back against the deep state if he had been inaugurated in 2021 than we now see after he had 4 years to arm himself and ready the arguments. By the way, the Democrats have now started taking to saying Trump won in 2020 and he's ineligible to serve his 3rd term now. So I don't know.
Dr. Eastman, Brunson case, the viability of that really looks strong against the 350 plus congressional people who violated their oath on January 6th to certify the election. How do you see that?
I applaud their heart. I think it was in the right place, but the case doesn't have merit. They don't have standing.
Dr. Eastman, I would just like to ask for anybody in this room or any other activists that we know, we've worked at DCF Center, we've done recounts, we've worked elections down in Detroit. Is there anything else that you would suggest that we should be doing or we could do? Because it just doesn't seem like the things that we've done really have moved the needle. What else do you suggest?
I think you need to keep doing, to the extent you can, don't just be a poll watchers, but become poll workers. I think I'm not 100% familiar with Michigan law here, but I think there is a bipartisan requirement, and if they're refusing that, get Patrick or one of the other lawyers in the room to help you bring suit against the county who's not allowing or meeting the bipartisan requirement. Document everything, so that the lawyers can create affidavits. In the Constantino case, there are hundreds of affidavits that describe what went on in TCF Center. And the needle is being moved. Ed Martin, the head of the weaponization department, has all of that. They're working through it, and I do believe that sometime before the end of this administration, we're going to see that move go over into the danger zone for the left that has been doing this. So keep doing it, keep documenting what you're doing. You never know when it will come to play, but make sure you've got the evidence there at the ready when it becomes necessary.
Good evening, Dr. Eastman. Perhaps an odd question, but I'm thinking, isn't it possible for you to circumvent in the courts your status as John Eastman attorney and represent yourself pro se as John Eastman citizen?
Yeah, I can do that when it's me that's the topic of the discussion. There's two problems with that. A lot of the work I'm doing is on behalf of others, the birthright citizenship or whatever, so I can't play as a representative capacity. But we figure out a ways around. The other problem is in my own cases, there's an old adage, every lawyer in the room knows it, a lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. Partly because you're so close to the case, it's hard for you to see the flaws in your own argument and the strengths in the other side's argument. And you really need that neutral advocate. So I'm working very closely with my legal teams, and I've got legal teams in Georgia, in DC, in New York, in Boston, in New Mexico, in Arizona, in California. I've been named in 18 different matters. My favorite one was a guy named me the lead defendant in a case that included me and Sean Hannity and Fox News and Donald Trump and Ivanka Trump and Don Jr. and on and on and on, and Michael Zuckerberg. And I said, wait a minute, he was on the other side of this whole thing. And one of the allegations was that we were all billionaire oligarchs trying to undermine our democracy. So I brought that to my wife's attention. You can imagine that Ricky Ricardo, Lucy Arnaz moment. Lucy, where are you hiding all that money? But it still cost me nearly 50 grand to get that case, that frivolous case, dismissed. And this is part of their game. So I work closely with those attorneys, even though I'm not representing myself in them. They are my team counsel, but with the constitutional issues in particular, criminal defense lawyers usually don't know a whole lot about the Constitution more broadly. They know the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, and so I'm working with them to make sure they're up to speed on that. But thank you very much. By the way, the other thing we did in one of the Doe's cases, which is in the lower court, my law partner, who's a former student of mine, gets to supervise my work now when I'm inactive. I can still work under the auspices of supervision of another attorney. But he made me the amicus curiae instead of the signature block signature. So there are ways I can let the court know what I'm still doing. Right.
I think with your last few sentences, you were more or less asking my question, because I still can't quite grasp how you are not able to disengage at some level, but you can still consult naturally. Like you say, we all have our own blind spots. Yeah. But if you, if your status changes, because you are, after all, Citizen Eastman as well.
Well, when I'm clear of all this stuff, it would be lovely if I could be appointed a special prosecutor to help with Ed Martin and go after the folks that have been doing this. So we'll see.
Dr. Eastman, a lot of us are leadership activists that are in this room right now. One of our biggest responsibilities is obviously raising money for the party, trying to keep our volunteers motivated, and to get our voters out to vote. One of the biggest challenges that I've had as a leader is I keep hearing, are we ever going to see justice? So, Dr. Eastman, are we ever going to see justice for the 2020 election? Well,
let me put it this way. at the end of time, we will all see justice. It's one of the things, God wins, and he's already won. All right, so one of the things that keeps me going and keeps me in the battle is my faith in that. There's nothing they can do to hear me here on earth that would cause me to sell out my soul, given the importance of justice in the kingdom of God. And when you begin with that premise, the other kinds of justice are mere mortal things, kind of pale in comparison. But yes, I do think we are going to see justice. It's not moving as quickly as any of us would like. We would have liked, Trump gets inaugurated at noon on January 20th, and by 5 p.m. that day, we would have liked to see a lot of people in shackles. It doesn't work that way, particularly when you're dealing with institutions that are so overwhelmingly against justice. And so Pam Bondi and her team, Kash Patel and his team, are only going to get one credible chance at this. And they've got to make sure it's brought in the right venue. That's why the significance of the Mar-a-Lago raid being included in the DNI referral is so significant. We can get a more fair venue to bring these in. But that was not an easy thing to pull off, because otherwise it's going to be in the District of Columbia. And if you're a conservative in the District of Columbia, you're guaranteed to go to prison for the rest of your life. If you're a liberal in the District of Columbia, you're guaranteed not even get charges brought in an indictment by the grand jury. And so they were dealing with a lot of very technical and very difficult issues to try and bring this forward. But I think they are making progress. The things I've seen from the outside, like the thing in Tina Peters' case, like the referral, like the convening of a grand jury, are steps that had to be taken, and they take a time, but they are being taken. And I believe it with all my heart that these are good people doing what they can to accomplish this. So I hope we're going to see justice before much longer.
So Dr. Eastman, 15 of us electors, unfortunately, like you, had to put out a lot of money for legal defense. Do we have any recourse through malicious prosecution lawsuit, defamation, or what do you even think about a bar complaint against Dana Nessel?
All of the above. I would throw the spaghetti up against the wall and see what sticks. But malicious prosecution, these are tough cases. The lawyers will tell you they're designed to be tough, because everybody that loses a criminal matter thinks that they were maliciously prosecuted, and they've made them deliberately tough. Your case is extraordinary, and it certainly ought to get there. Defamation, they're going to have immunity from those for the things they say in court. I'm working on another. Dan asked me earlier what other things are we working on to go on offense. It's to get rid of qualified immunity for prosecutors when they so clearly violate constitutional rights. But for now, they have immunity from those things. But yeah, I mean, if you've got very specific things where they've made demonstrably false representations to the court, then that ought to be lead to a complaint by your attorneys or by you individuals. Here's the problem, though. Here's the problem. The bar is not going to be favorable to such complaints. Look, I know for a fact there were complaints filed against Adam Schiff out in California for his nonsense with the Russia hoax. And that was 8 years ago. Has anybody seen that Adam Schiff had a bar disciplinary thing even investigated against him? So they're predisposed not to go after the folks on their side and to manufacture cases against people on the other side. So unfortunately, you should follow the complaint anyway. Build the record, document it irrefutably, and when they refuse to do anything about it, you'll use that down the road. But no, that's the likely result, unfortunately. Yeah, civil rights violations. There's a lovely provision of Section 42 U.S. Code, Section 1985. It's the old Ku Klux Klan Act. And we immediately don't think about that because normally it's, the civil rights violations have to be based on race or ethnic background or what have you. But there's a subsection of that statute that if people are through threats or intimidation preventing you from engaging in your casting and counting and ensuring your votes, that's a violation, and there are private causes of action for that. And I think that's what's exactly going on in your case. So your lawyers ought to be looking at that. I'm not giving legal advice.
Okay, Doctor.
I want to thank you again for standing up. A lot of people in your situation would have thrown in the towel. The amount it has cost you in grief and sanity and finances demonstrates a level of courage and commitment to our free system of government that needs to be applauded everywhere you go. Thank you. And help her cover her legal bills.
I'm wondering if you're aware of anything that's happening on the congressional level to rein in some of this lawfare in terms of, like, I was following, I think it was DC Dorino or something, and he was saying, you know, if you have so many of your cases, you know, you lose, you know, maybe after 3 you should get censored, and then after that impeached. I mean, I'm very frustrated with Congress in that we have control of the House and the Senate and nothing's being done, because it's obvious that this lawfare is just strangling our country, and not only just, it means the people, it's the process, it's taking forever. So are you aware of anything that's trying to be like in the works that we could support, maybe call our congressman and say, do something?
First thing you should all do is send a text message or email to Senator Chuck Grassley for his disclosure last week of the Arctic frost documents and the gross abuse of the subpoenas and search warrants that go after the financial institutions of Turning Point, of me, of America First Legal, of Mike Lindell, of My Pillow, of all these people. Those are egregious violations of the Fourth Amendment, and we now know about them because of Chuck Grassley. So send him a note and thank him. The second thing is, politics is the art of the possible. And if you're Mike Johnson and you're looking at a bunch of rhinos and you can't do anything without every single one of the votes, the notion that we're going to get the House of Representatives to get 50% +1 on impeachment is slim to none. And even if they could get it, the notion that we would get a 2/3 vote to convict over in the Senate is 0. And so they're saying, well, why go through that futile effort? Now, I've kind of suggested maybe it's worth going through anyway so they can get the message that we're watching and that we're not going to tolerate this much longer. But, you know, there was a lot going on. The second thing, you know, send a note to Jim Jordan and thank him for the investigations they're doing. Barry Loudermilk, that had investigations on the illegality of the conduct of the J6 committee in a report that was issued last December. These are huge things that are kind of helping those of us in the trenches fighting that are giving us the receipts. Those people are doing some things. It's very frustrating for us out in the hinterland that it moves so slowly. But you gotta imagine the behemoth that they're up fighting against and the amount of pressure it takes to move it even an inch. And they've moved it yards. They've moved it yards since January, and they will continue to do so. That's the best I can do at the moment.
Dr. Eastman, I got a question based on the trend that people are deciding to fight something based off of or choosing the venue rather than just trying to win based off of the law. And how do you think we'll stop that trend in our country?
Yeah, so we're seeing that. We're seeing all of these lawsuits against President Trump brought largely in 3 different jurisdictions. District of Maryland, the District of Massachusetts, and the Western District of Washington. Why? Because the senators in those districts use the blue slip process to block every Republican nominee. And so all you've got in those districts, largely, there may be 1 or 2 exceptions, all you've got in those districts are Obama or Biden or even Clinton appointed judges. And they know, therefore, they're going to get a favorable judge just by bringing in those districts. So when you've got the case of New Jersey versus Trump, and it's brought in Boston, there's just something very weird about that. But they are forum selecting, and one of the reasons the Supreme Court struck down the nationwide injunctions on the birthright citizenship stuff is precisely because it was leading to this forum shopping. How do we deal with that going forward? We got to get the Republicans in the Senate to say no more of the blue slip. No more of the blue slip. We're not going to tolerate you stacking the deck on our courts for political ends. We're going to go back to the rule of law. But there's no stomach for that in the establishment wing of the Republican Party in the Senate, unfortunately. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you for honoring me, and thank you for watching the film. I truly appreciate it.